A lot of the bioregional organizing happened in the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s, and it was a little bit before my time, also before the internet. And so I first kind of stumbled on the idea of bioregionalism actually when I was 17 years old. And at that time, I stumbled onto the idea of Cascadia. And from there, it was a multi-year learning process. And it's really rooted in this idea of just connecting people back into place and trying to find these principles and values that are sustainable and ethical and local, and that can look like a lot of different things. And that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing.
The lack of the ability of this system to actually do what was needed was continually what I kept running up against. And so eventually, I think, once you've helped be part of policy changes that are moving in the right direction, seen governments wiping it away, and you've had enough of that frustration, I think eventually seeing the work that just over many decades is not actually moving in the direction it needs to be to create the kind of social infrastructure that we need to be able to have coherent systems that are in right relationship with the land and with each other. Eventually, when you find others that are starting to make sense outside of the system, because that's the work that's actually needed. And in fact, you stop fighting the system and start creating what's needed. It is incredibly liberating and powerful.
I think both Claire and myself are grassroots organizers, and we have a lot of tradition and background in that. And it does actually impact the way that we're organizing. And it impacts the way that we're viewing this as almost providing scaffolding, with the idea of that being a temporary support from the outside that can really help teams and groups as they're getting started. I think our biggest focus recently has been that we are looking at trying to find and define a critical path that groups and landscapes can go through. And I actually think maybe the landscape is actually the better scale to talk about, that we are inviting landscapes to self-organize a team, a hub, through a process which is really rooted in this idea of bioregional mapping, where groups can be coming together on the scale of a landscape, not as one project or another project that are working in the small framework of competitive funding, but actually now collaborating around a landscape vision and plan. We want groups to also start talking about their own budgets. I think that this is really important, that if money flowed tomorrow, that there is a problem in the ability for people to visualize, connect, and support work happening by regenerators in the landscape. We need to be able to connect them with flows of money and support and help hook that person in with networks of other peers doing similar work, of mentorship, of support, and get them resourced to the level that we need. And we need to be doing it together, and we need to be having skills and tools that are replicable.
Working with the relationships that exist and building trust is the way that we see this happening. We can talk about it, but actually we need to iterate it. It grows organically. It's not just a theory.
As we create this back end of probably a Cascadia flow fund, aligning our funding ecosystems, building local investment and opportunity networks, which can offer low and zero interest loans and all of these other things. But if we don't have that mycelial web working on the scale of an entire landscape, and then the learning in parallel that we're doing together, it's going to fail.